All right, I've been promising this for a little while, that I would show you how to deal with your cylinders that you're going to take home looking like this. I tried to throw them pretty similar to what I tried to throw them pretty similar to what students had around, and I'm just going to show some alternative ideas for finishing cylinders without the wheel. The important part that we need to have on here, the important part of the foot is we still need to have a bevel, and then you want a raised section in the middle for the inset foot, and if it's nice if you got a glazed catch, but this one was a little bit thicker. This one is, a straight cylinder on the inside and curves out on the outside like that. And this one is, it doesn't have a whole lot here to work with, but needs some finishing down here. So one option is to give it, somewhat literal feet. So kind of mark out on here with something straight. Kind of divide that in half, make a little mark, and then go somewhere in there, 90 degrees. Kind of make some crosshairs on it, and I don't know, I think I missed the middle over here. Yeah, that looks better. And then no, the finger dents are throwing me off, but I kind of did that on purpose too. Just so you can see I'm kind of eyeballing it. So I want to get that marked out. And I can either carve those out and leave these over here as feet, or I can have, those little spots as feet. I think I'm going to just kind of rough out a little curvy dealio on each of these spots. Just mark where I want my foot to go. Kind of compare, make sure that they're roughly the same size. This one's way skinnier, and this one's a bit wider, so that means I want to probably widen this one a bit and narrow this one in just a touch. I don't know, something like that. All right, then I'm going to go in and just start carving away. Now, I don't know how much thickness I've got here. You're not going to really know. So be gentle as you carve across. Make sure that you don't take out too much. going to kind of outline this. Then I'll just trace around that line. And what I'm trying to do here is build up enough of a foot that I can make some decisions about what I want that to look like later. I've never done one of these before. So as I work on it, I want to give myself room for experimenting and trying something out gradually, then going full on. So I'm taking out what I know will be extra clay here in the corners. I don't have a whole lot of extra in here, so I'm taking very little in there. And I like the wire loop tools as opposed to the ribbon tools, which I showed you how to make these out of paper clips earlier in a different video. So if you don't have access to one, you can make one. Should probably move these other ones until I'm ready to work with them. Just in case I bump them again. So I'm starting to get that. I'm gonna keep looking and feeling. I can't get my hand in there far enough to really feel, but I know I want to follow this line and have it kind of wrap around down there. I can see what it's doing on the inside, and I want to make the outside match that. So I'll just take it off a little bit at a time and bring that around. And I'm doing a lot of the flex test stuff where I keep pressing here to see if it's gotten too thin, and I'll start feeling a bit more flexibility in the clay. It'll bend in a little bit easier if it's gotten thin. If your clay's bone dry, you can't do the flex test. You just check really well with your eye, and if it gets too thin, you'll know it because you'll break through. So hopefully you're working with some leather hard clay. And these I let dry just exposed, mostly upright, so the rims got pretty dry before the bottoms had dried very much, and then I flipped them over for a little bit. So I've got, it's a bit softer down in here, but that should be fine. So I'll come across like this and wrap around underneath. Make sure I do that on all four, I don't know what you call these, between the legs. I mean, between the feet. You know, they're almost like, you know, you call it a crotch at a tree, although I don't know that this quite qualifies as that. But go in here, and this one's looking a little narrower again. And I keep trying to compare them in shape, in size, and just kind of working my way slowly toward the middle. and slowly, deeper into the clay, and trying to get that. So, and this is without a rasp. Personally, I really like using the rasps. Makes things like this a lot easier in that it smooths out a large surface really close to what you're generally looking for. And then it doesn't take very much extra work to get it down smooth. It just leaves a little bit of a texture behind as it does that. So these are coming in, this is coming in a bit steeper. But these will still come in. I think I like the way that works with the form, that this kind of comes straight down with just the little bit of a beveled edge and a tiny bit of flare right before that bevel. I'm also going to start separating these out as feet by adding a curve to this side. So think more dresser legs or chair legs than, the bottom of a cup for this style of foot. And I don't know, I think you get the idea. So another thing that can happen when you're trying to trim is that makes it hard to trim it on the wheel is that you drop it or it gets a big ding in it. It spins off. And a lot of those dings end up looking, I don't know, kind of like that. And so you're stuck with that in the thick clay. You got to get the clay down. Sometimes you can trim those out, but other times you can't. And so some suggestions on ways to deal with that. I am going to use a rasp on this one just to show you. And so you go around and you just take the rasp and give a nice beveled edge. To the cylinder. And then down in here, I made these smaller so I can't fit my hands in. I can't quite feel how thick this is, but it's pretty thin. So if the bottom is thin, you can just press it upward, and particularly if it's got just one thin spot in the middle, you look on the inside and push up until everything's level and flat on the inside, and then you deal with what you've got left on the outside. That needs to be done when it's a bit softer. This one still is fairly soft. And then I'm going to take a metal rib and scrape along there. And often you end up just scraping this way and this way, taking that out. I'm going to go in with the kind of sharper corner. It's a smaller rib. I don't know where my standard size one went. Oh, there it is. So you go across like this, and like that, and then that becomes gradual. You don't want a lot of inconsistency in the thickness of the foot. Right now it's thin here, thickest on those corners, and thin again there. We want to take out as much of that thickness as possible, but it's also better if you have varying degrees of thickness if it's gradual. If the thick spot and the thin spot are right next to each other, that's when you're very likely to get cracking as things dry. And then of course, too thick is just liable to explode. So, plus it makes it heavy. Some people like the extra weight at the bottom of cups. A lot of people do actually, but I don't. I'm always looking for it. And with handmade ceramics, one of the most common complaints is that it's all heavy and bulky, and so you often want to eliminate as much of that as possible. Other times people, embrace the difference and make that part of the point, and that's fine too. So I had that, and I just kind of made a mark across where that dent was, see if I can match that, and then I will come across over here, and maybe I'll make, I don't want to do anything too regular and even. I mean, I could try and make this like a gear with all the same curve, but I don't have the kind of skill to do that consistently enough for me to like it. I'll be annoyed at the parts that don't quite match up. So then I can do these, I could do just vary, but I think I can get them pretty consistent in the curve, but I'm going to vary the lengths. So this next one, I'm going to make the same general mark, but a bit shorter. And then, curving back the other way. I want them to have that little bit of an S curve to them. It's something I like. And looking at this one, that actually gives me an idea for this. Instead of just doing varying lengths, which is fine, and I could go and do a longer one then, and then a shorter one, and vary the lengths as I go around. I'm also seeing a little bit of, with this one, and this I could make it work, a little bit of a flame-like pattern, and that adds more variety and is a little more organic and something I personally enjoy more, so I'm going to do that instead. And for that, I like to hold it this way, just so I can see it's vertical like the flames are. I'm going to make sure I keep carving down, but maybe this way I'll leave a little more clay down here to help catch the glaze down at the bottom of the thing, because here I took out so much that I need to remake my bevel. But looking at it, I've got enough room to do that. And I want to have the bevel still a separate thing. So here, if I don't want to wipe the clay clear up to there, I'm going to pull that edge down until that now there is the edge of my bevel. So I control things that way a bit. So I'll go around and make some flame designs in here, and do sometimes it's nice to do a little bit of layering, so you do a light design up in here, and it's the little S-curvy stuff that's happening gives it that flame flickery motion stuff that's going on. So you do that, and then as this comes down, then you can do another layer in here. And you can do the other layer also inset to it. That tends to be a little bit weird. Mostly what you want to do is leave a couple more points up in there of a little bit of extra thickness as you come down. And you can give it a little bit of a layered effect. But I want to make sure that I'm carving away quite a bit down here. And you can see that's starting to shape up into something pretty interesting looking. Trees are, of course, something else that I'm always interested in. I partly went with flames just because I didn't want to do a tree again, but trees are great because they do flare out the way that your pot tends to, and so you make the roots. The trick is with a tree, if you've got a branch that, you know, you're making this into something that looks like a root, as it comes out, it's gonna flare until you just make so they come out until they go under the ground. You just use that edge of the bevel to be the very bottom of it, and you just slightly round each. You can make the roots come all the way out, but then you round each one and give them a little bit of a bevel. Somewhat like this one here. So this one, lots of carving, and each of these little roots, you can see they all have their own little rounding on them, but they still have the right look where they go into the ground. So it still gives that a appearance, and it's fairly durable. Well, assuming you don't knock it off of a shelf and have it shatter on the ground multiple times, which is what actually happened to this thing. But yeah, you've got that option, and then with this one, it's a bit thicker right down through there, and we've got a faceting option, which is giving it facets like a gem. A gem is round, but it's round by a bunch of straight geometric lines. And that's usually done with a particularly tight stretched wire tool that's stretched over a frame of some sort, but you can do it just by hand. And the only trick is going to be that was I don't do a lot of faceting. That wasn't the trick I was going to talk about. The trick is going to be coming up with a faceted design that doesn't have to be perfect in order to look good, or getting it perfect in the geometry of it. So it's probably best so you don't do this like I just did.